Hello everyone, and welcome to another video with me, Umber Rays, and today we're going to be talking about the state of JP, a rather large and complex topic that I feel like a lot of other people aren't necessarily going to make this video, so I'm going to try and make it and see what the reaction is from people, because this video is a little bit for people on the global side. This is for people who play the JP side currently and are wondering, what is the ecosystem like? You know, what is currently going on? I'm also recording this during one of the biggest typhoons in apparently the last 25 years, one of the strongest storms. So if the power goes out in the middle of this, well, there you fucking are. Anyway, so there's a lot of different things to cover on this video, so I am just going to get right into it and start talking about it. Now, the state of the JP side, let's get one thing clear. I do not frequent the Japanese forums. I do not look into what the Japanese community really has to say about the game too much, other than just some general impressions from live streams and whatnot. But we are going to take a look at that as well today. So first of all, we need to just take a look at the different sections of the game and what they have been like for the past few years, because we are coming up on the 3rd anniversary, and I feel that the 3rd anniversary for Brave Exvius is going to be a rather somewhat important one on the JP side, given the way that story, content, everything like that is going. That's interesting. I guess that didn't register from when I was playing on the phone. Okay, so let's all first of all take look at everybody's favorite thing in the entire world, and that was a big one. 250-kilometer gusts of wind. I love it. Anyway, let's take a look at Arena. Now, Arena is just such a bag of worms right now. Now, there are two states in the current JP Arena. First of all, the weeks where it is essentially every 3rd week here on the JP side, we have a special arena event which has major rewards, you know, for placing very high. You get 5-star EX tickets, you get some UOC pieces, you get a whole bunch of stuff. Now, the cost of getting first place in these weeks of arena is actually incredibly high. The rewards are super, super nice. There's the power flickering. These rewards are incredibly nice because you get a lot of stuff, but the cost is very, very high. You're looking at most consistently, even weeks, if not, months, if not, you know, quite a few months later, we are still seeing a lot of people spending fairly heavily on these sides. Over 1 million points in Arena, and even with the bonus units, that is still a lot of points to rack up in 1 week of Arena. You're talking about people who are essentially just mass playing, if not bodying these things, and spending approximately 100,000 lapis probably on a single week of Arena. Now, those are incredibly competitive. We have seen some fluctuations with them where, for instance, when all females were banned, it was probably the lowest that I've seen participation for a major week in Arena, with a ton of people just not being interested because a lot of their favorite and best units are just completely and totally, and just a second, I need to just gonna turn right off my PS4. Let's not have something bad happen to that. PC will be fine. PC's running on our power supply. But anyway, Arena is in the 3rd week is incredibly competitive still on most normal months where there isn't a heavy restriction being imposed on people. But regular weeks are basically almost deserted. Like, if you were to even spend even 5 orbs a day, you can basically stay above 30,000 incredibly easy. For instance, right now, I have not even spent my 5 orbs today, and I'm currently sitting at about 23,000 position, and this is kind of the way it is on JP right now. Most people do not spend on these weeks. However, if you look at the top tier, Some people are still spending Lapis, which is kind of a little bit crazy right now to think that on a regular week where the rewards are, for lack of a better way of explaining it, just not that great. You know, more limit burst pot, sure, but really only 2% more trust Moogle than getting the 10,000 spot. And then if you want the 1,000 to 10,000 spot, it's actually not even that costly. All you have to do is basically just use your regular arena orbs in a week and you're perfectly fine. But the top, I don't know, maybe 3,000 people are either refreshing in some way, shape, or form, and that is kind of surprising because it just doesn't feel worth it. Now the other thing, as I've said, is bonus units. Now you'll see from basically the last two banners, the bonus units being able to be chosen. So we have Yuffie, Zac, Sabin, Edgar currently, as well as an old unit too. You can get 75% bonus, but again, it hurts kind of your arena team. And these teams in these off weeks are carefully what I would describe as more annoying. Now, if you remember in the days, hey, oh my god, CG Fina, Ayaka, they are the most incredibly annoying. But honestly, that's not the way people troll here anymore on the JP side. The way that people do troll on the JP side now is essentially tanks. Very well-built tanks, which kind of just delay your wins. Nobody really enjoys Arena that much, I don't think. It's like kind of hitting a punching bag nowadays, because 7 stars have come along and are just, you know, too much HP, too much stats, and in general just doesn't really matter. But both physical and magical tanks will protect a unit, and, you know, more annoying teams tend to set these up as just being, you know, multiple tanks, very difficult to get through, essentially just time wasters. That's kind of the new way to troll, and only really the most effective way to troll anymore. Nowadays there's ways just to have so much damage output through chaining an arena that it's not even really worth trying that hard anymore. So taking a look next is the story. Now, the story on the JP side, I would say, has been progressing fairly nicely. One of the features that has been probably the nicest little addition to story on the JP side was the story mission reset, which basically, you know, took all the story missions that you have done and just reset the rewards. So the longer you waited, you know, the more you could potentially get out of it by just waiting till the very end, and then or the end of September, and then resetting everything after having done, you know, everything that gave you Lapis or any nice rewards. So the JP side has been running story events fairly frequently. There was only the 1 month when the story writer had some problems where we didn't get story events. So story events have been coming fairly regularly, and the content has been not soul level. If you remember last year at the end of Season 1, Soul was essentially kind of a roadblock for a lot of people, where I think they made the story difficulty just a little bit too high. And now, you know, that story event seems to be, or the story content for the most part is pretty, you know, leveled out. The summon difficulty has taken quite a big step up. Taking a look at someone like Ashura, the difficulty on the scale on this, as you may have seen in some of my streams, is pretty difficult. It is definitely 7-star geared content, and that is some of the stuff that we are seeing regularly. And speaking of story content, I would be remiss without talking about another form of content that comes very regularly, which is the challenges. Now, Trials recently, there really hasn't been anything quite as difficult, or as easy, I should say, as Omega or the last Dark Esper Trials. Those are pretty relatively easy nowadays compared to the extreme versions that have been coming out. And this is kind of a sticking point for me personally, because we aren't seeing so much new content as we're just seeing repeated content. And the repeated content here is a tiny bit frustrating, to say the least, particularly just seeing a whole bunch of old recycled stuff, just with higher percentages, higher damages, and some new moves isn't super exciting. Obviously, Lich is one of the more exciting trials to come along recently, since it is not just repeated old content, even though it seems to be in the extreme version, which is kind of confusing. If there is something I can knock about the more recent trials, it's that if you do have a ton of good content or a ton of good equipment and everything, these trials aren't necessarily always worth the headache. Take Lich, for example, who has a 190 attack spear. Now, that 190 attack spear is pretty nice, don't get me wrong. If someone gave it to me, I'd say, oh, thank you very much for that. But it's not true dual hand. It is, pretty okay, which is the way I would describe a lot of the rewards, the specific big rewards for completing these trials. They are definitely nice. They are definitely, nice to have and everything. But are they needed? Not so much. I mean, you can kind of get the same thing out of regular Super TMRs, and if you can beat the content that, is here, then is the equipment really that worth it? Possibly, probably not, though. Seems to be the general thing or the general feeling of what I've been noticing lately. And so that kind of covers the story. Now, next, just to talk about, what we have to talk about next is banners. Now, banners, obviously there has been some changes recently. There has been some things that have not changed and have stayed fairly static. First of all, the 250 daily summon every day, it's a cheaper summon, but is it super worth it? Not really. Lapis's value recently has changed, I would say considerably. If you consider that, all the time we see step-up banners, like there's always some kind of step-up banner recently, and this is definitely one of the ones where, our step-up banner has, for about 2,500 Lapis, or 25,000 Lapis, 2,500 Lapis would be a great deal. But 25,000 Lapis, you get 2 rainbows, get some extra 10% tickets, even get some percentage ups, and maybe a 10% trust Moogle or some kind of bonuses. We've seen a lot of variations now, after an entire year of step-up banners, of how the step-up banner is formed. And honestly, while the step-up banners are definitely more of my favorite than spending tickets recently, it is starting to become just a regular thing where now we're just, oh yeah, there's a new banner coming. Yeah, just tell me about the step-up banner when it comes out. Because the rate-ups on the step-up banner are more valuable than just kind of spending your Lapis. Maybe if you feel like you're the luckiest person, you just want to do 250 dailies and get a ton of rainbows, which, congratulations to you. Must be nice. But for the most part, Lapis's value seems to be focused more towards step-up banners recently. Getting 2 rainbows is potentially more valuable than, just trying your luck a whole bunch of times during the 250. And, yeah, with this conversation comes the conversation about units, too. Units have definitely, ever since, I would say, approximately the more recent Final Fantasy X banner with Jet and Auron, been quite the continuing power creep. Not necessarily a building power creep, but power creepy enough that the units lately have been pretty good investments to go on. Now, I was not lucky enough back then to get Jet and Auron, but as it turns out, it didn't really matter, as there were a ton of great units to come in the future. But Jet and Auron marked 2 very powerful entries into the game that finally provided competition to what had been previously entered, or what had been previously available. Auron basically being a very strong competition against a breaker like Lid, who CG Lid, still one of the best breakers in the game, but obviously Auron can do a little bit more different stuff. And Jet being a damage dealer that could compete with CG Hayu. Both of these units marked a beginning shift towards a much larger, much faster power creep that we have been seeing now for multiple months. Take, for example, the introduction of the Xenogear units. The Xenogear units were a big part of the power creep, and we have seen massive power creeps, in every category of unit in the game, I would say, with the one that most people would probably argue with me about is the healer class. The healer class lately, Aerith probably, pretty darn close. I would say she's a little bit better than Santa Rosalia, but a lot of people would fight me on that, so come at me, bro. But Faye, Ellie obviously marked just one of the biggest power creeps in mages, and since then, units such as Golbez and Ultima, both having a 5-star form and being in the mage category, are incredibly powerful units that have been, that have just kind of, really just destroyed the entire mage damage category. With that being said, physical category also saw, incredibly quick power creep, not just with Jet, but shortly after seeing CG Fireberdis, who was a very powerful unit, followed by one of the most powerful units in the game at the time, our Dragoons, Cid. And then, since then, we followed up with, of course, CG Axstar and Yuffie, both units, and, of course, all of you people out there, stop typing your angry comments, Citan as well, have all been incredibly powerful units that have really pushed the game into a higher damage dealing bracket, or at least a higher expected damage dealing bracket. Now, the units themselves, honestly, I would say that in comparison, we've seen a good, fairly strong, healthy amount of growth. If you've been playing the game for the last few months and gotten, any of the rainbows, then you've probably advanced your power level of your team considerably, with the addition of Axstar or Primrose or Aerith or whoever kind of thing. But the big thing is that community-wise, I would still argue very strongly against people on the global side really looking at what is effectively some of the reviews out there. And this isn't necessarily speaking bad about the competition, but it kind of is. Both Ultima and Famitsu reviews, there's a reason why I don't believe in putting numbers on my unit review scores, because I honestly don't think that it's as simple as just putting a number. Oh, Edgar's a 23, Orin's a 22.5, therefore I should get Edgar. When, Orin might just be generally better for a whole mass load of trials, where Edgar is specifically nice because he can do extra damage versus machines, and then we just don't see a machine trial for a long time. Was Edgar really worth it? Maybe, maybe not. Also, there's, just personal favoritism in specific units and everything like that. So honestly, for people on global, do not take these as any kind of gospel or anything like that. I would not even say take my reviews as any kind of gospel. They are ideas and windows into how useful these units can be, and you guys kind of have to make your own decisions whether they are worth spending your resources, especially your hard-earned resources, on these kind of units. For instance, with me, currently I just don't see the need. If I really wanted a new breaker, I would probably get Orin. I would probably aim for Orin over Edgar, because while Edgar does have a nice 30-hit chaining ability, Orin has some generally nice buffing moves that support the team a little bit better, where, Edgar's a little bit more about limit burst generation. There's some decisions to be made there, for sure. But I would not consider the Famitsu and Ultima reviews. The one thing I have noticed about Famitsu and Ultima, I can't remember which one originally did this, but the general grading score that was done, which I believe it was Ultima. It was the one that gave basically a score out of 100 points. That one used to show off how those were done, where it would be so many zeros on one side and so many 100s on the other side, and then that would average together to make that, out of 100 score. Those pages seem to be gone. When I took a look today, I could not see them in the more recent units. So either they're being sneakier about how they're being done, but that's one of the reasons why I just don't trust those reviews, because it's either 0 or 100 and very little in the middle, but somehow we get an average. that's how mathematics work. Now, of course, one of the hot button topics recently on the global side is talking about rewards. And rewards for the JP side, of course, we have our 10 regular tickets per month from our live stream. Those are done, just by having a raid challenge, which recently have not been going super well. Taking a look at, the rewards that we get off, for instance, a Mog King. Recently added has been this feature of a point system, where the more you do it, the more higher points you get, the more rewards you get, including a guaranteed 5-star random ticket. This has been happening for many months now, I think since Jet or Orin, but basically every month we've been guaranteed at least a 5-star. With that being said, Mog Kings have, generally improved for the amount of content that is available through them. Obviously, we have 3 UOCs. I know, and just as a disclaimer right now, while I do not support Gummy's decision to only give 1 UOC per month, I also kind of understand it. It seems, I hear a lot about global people getting, having seeming a fair amount of rainbows. And again, this isn't a global commentary video, but if I was to say something, a major critique about the system, first of all, if they were just going to add 1 UOC, they should have just made it cheaper. I think that would have been okay if it had not been, 150,000 currency. If it had just been like 100,000 currency to make up for the fact that there's not 2 for now, that would be okay, although honestly, probably should just be 2 and make people generally happy. But honestly, Mog Kings, other than the general creep of equipment, which, whether it's useful to you or not, is kind of subjective, but in general, the Mog Kings are kind of the exact same. The one thing that is a little bit improving on the JP side, finally, is the monthly logins. With this month, the big noteworthy thing being about 2,300 Lapis and a guaranteed 5-star ticket for hitting the 20th day of logging in. Again, I think this is Alum basically trying to keep, more people playing the game, which I'll talk about that in a minute when it comes to community. But the monthly rewards, the general free 5-star, as well as the the Monday free summons and everything like that. Reward-wise, it feels definitely okay. I wouldn't say that it feels great. Obviously, 2 5-star, guaranteed 5 stars a month, plus whatever banners or deals we get. That's quite a different thing from one another. The rewards being ways to keep free-to-players, continually playing so that there is a healthy community, and whereas, the bundles and everything are more for the people who spend money, who want to get, better value. At the end of last month for the Final Fantasy VII banner, we saw a nice, 10k Lapis bundle that gave you a guaranteed rainbow that was a Final Fantasy VII character. It could be any Final Fantasy VII character. A 5-star guaranteed ticket, 20 regular tickets, and, 2 10% trust moogles, which is a really, really damn good deal. And I would like to see more of these bundles coming forth in the future, but this is more about how we currently are, not about what I want to see. That's probably a different video that will, range to another 30 minutes. But with all that being said, let's talk about one of the things that I have the biggest problem with, which is the community. And the community is definitely a sticking point for me. If you look at friend lists, something I've noticed in the last few months, also because probably there's been a little bit of a ban for, people either TMR farming or farming the story events, since the 1 stamina story event stuff means that you can basically clear, rank up really quickly, and Alum is not okay with that. But taking a look at, friend lists, there have been some major key long-term high rank players that have, stopped playing. Now, When I say high rank and, long term, I just mean that they're playing the game for a long time, not necessarily that they are spending money. Something that maybe people don't remember often enough is that this game is free to play. It means that you can play the game for free, but what you get is essentially what you get. For people who spend money, so long as they continue playing the game is pretty well healthy, because you can, Alan could make a fake friend list. They could do a whole bunch of different things to essentially keep a smaller community going if they really wanted to. But with that being said, taking a look at, I think one of the best windows is the active player list that is in Arena, which seems to be hovering around the JP side of approximately, I don't know, maybe about 30,000, and possibly, maybe 40, 50,000 during bigger weeks, because honestly, the JP side, I have a feeling that a lot of people just slouch or just do not do off-week special Arena weeks anymore. Like this week currently. Just not that much competition, not that many people interested in going through the grind anymore, since stat pots are a little more readily available. But another big window into the way that the community is the live streams. And the live streams are definitely a really, really big window. If you look here, basically from top to bottom, you are looking at the most recent big live stream, the monthly one, with a middle one in between, followed by 2 other monthly live streams below it. So you're looking at 31, 29, and 28. These are just, some of the more recent ones that I ended up picking, not for any particular reason other than just, kind of to show off some examples. So obviously the more recent one, we are looking at about 50,000 views currently for the more recent ones, as we are getting closer to the anniversary, which makes sense. People are going to become more active as we get closer to those big anniversary rewards. And the thing you'll note is about likes or dislikes, and generally dislikes are higher on live streams than likes. And here's the big thing, and this has always been my biggest takeaway from all of these live streams. One, the live streams do not represent a total number of viewers. For one thing, people might go back and watch these things again, so, total views may not necessarily show that stuff. Also, there are players out there who play this game who just don't give that much of a shit about it, who are not deep down into every little crevice of every piece of data. There are people who just play this casually and do not watch the live streams. But the other thing you'll note is that the viewer count doesn't necessarily decrease either. As a matter of fact, the smaller mid-month ones, those I kind of always expect to have lower numbers. But the thing that we are seeing is, the viewer counts are still pretty damn high for the number of dislikes or likes. The one spike in likes, I believe, was the month when CG Axstar was announced. So, yeah, that's kind of the reason for that one. But despite all of these protests of people saying, oh, this is a dead game, oh, if you've ever entered into the Reddit Discord, it's something I see a lot, dead game, the game still actually outputs a fair amount of money and profit, because the month where CG Axstar came out, I believe Alum had a pretty damn good month in terms of how much money was made. And despite all the dislikes really quickly change when they announce a big reward. You damn well better believe that 2.4k dislikes would have quickly changed to a whole bunch of likes if there was a popular character announced other than Edgar and Sabin. And as well, with the fixed dice thing, they had just been like, well, you guys, we nerfed the shit out of fixed dice, but here you go, have basically a, two free full UOCs, 10 pieces of UOCs. You damn well better be sure that the community would have changed their tune very quickly, as I have seen that happen in the past where dislikes have been higher and then all of a sudden they announce something that the players want, or some kind of rewards, or, just compensation, and then bam, 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 likes already go up. So if anything, I would say that the JP community is definitely not going anywhere. And the music ended just as I'm going to go right into my takeaway. I would say that the state of the JP is still fairly healthy. There are still people spending money, even in off months where, for instance, we have Edgar and Sabin, and it's just not a big draw for a ton of people, so they're just not spending money. Alum is starting to become a little bit better about, offering rewards for spending money on the game. One of the more recent things was, depending on how much money you spent in the last couple days of August, obviously a little bit of a ploy to, boost revenue for that month, probably because revenue was a little low. Aerith and Zack may not have been, and especially Crimson in the middle of the month was probably not the draw that they thought they were going to get. So there you are. But, getting the 8800 Lapis bundle in the last couple days nets you 5 UOCs, which is, a pretty nice little reward for spending money on the game. I think that if players are to spend money, they should be rewarded as such. So I think that, the general state of JP is pretty nice and pretty healthy for a couple of reasons. One, despite how many people might be complaining, saying dead game, the amount of dislikes we see on the more recent live streams, doesn't really matter too much, does it, when everybody is still essentially playing the game? Secondly, the rewards are becoming more generous, which I think is going to, be good for the game, essentially, in the long term, keeping everybody happy and playing the game longer. And the other thing is that I would say that the unit list is particularly promising for the future, both on the reintroduction of old characters like Edgar and Sabin, or, who is the other example? Golbez and Rubicant. Well, I guess Rubicant's new, but Golbez is old. Anyway, old characters finally getting 5-star forms puts them into a much more, just better spot, I think. Especially when it comes to, just being encouraging that we're going to see, probably a 5-star Vivi, a 5-star everything, every unit, basically, which means that your favorite characters will be much more useful as the power creep continues. But in terms of the power creep, there was definitely a power spike, and I feel that more recent characters are kind of, leveling a little bit. Once Axstar came out and was just able to do so much damage, and same with Satan, units like Sabin or Zack, who could potentially output a lot of damage too, all really, really, really great, don't get me wrong, but not necessarily as big of a deal as maybe we might be led to believe. So I would say that the state of JP right now is actually fairly decent, if not for some maybe minor frustrations. I wouldn't necessarily be too worried about the health of JP. The 3rd anniversary will probably be a really important point, given that 5 stars are starting to become, a little essential, I would say is the right term, for new trials and everything. I would say that a general rainbow rate has to probably be strongly considered at this point, because it's going to be one of the biggest barriers going into the future of just, not being able to get some of the newer 5 stars, because newer 5 stars are generally geared towards newer trials and everything. Looking at, again, just really quickly, the Lich trial, Red 13, who was a unit that I basically considered, not necessarily that strong, is incredibly powerful with his Demon Reaper Spirit Killers against a trial like the Lich. And so newer units seem to be, just a little bit more focused on these trials, but also some old too. So it seems to be a healthier mix on Reflection. I don't think that the community is any more negative than just really trying to get some extra rewards and benefits and fighting tooth and nail for everything that they can essentially squeeze out of Alum, which I think is perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly okay for that to happen because it doesn't seem like most of the players are going anywhere, at least for now. And another thing to really consider about how strong that seems to be is, remember, in Japan, there is a lot of competition for the phone games. Fate Grand Order is probably one of the, if not the most popular phone game currently in Japan, barring something else that I do not know about off the top of my head. But the fact that there are still players, and still that many players that are coming out to the live streams and either voicing their dislike or their like about things, kind of shows you, A, that the community isn't necessarily disappearing, and hopefully we'll see some more players start coming and playing the JP side in the future. But this has definitely been a long video, so if you have anything to say or anything to comment about, please leave it in the comment below. Who knows? Maybe I'll even get time to read them in the future if I'm not super busy. It seems that we are in the eye of the typhoon right now. So, with that being said, here's hoping that the 3rd anniversary is going to bring a lot of awesome stuff to all of the JP players. And as always, I will continue to make content about the JP side. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry for the incredibly long video, but this is one that I had a lot to talk about and a lot to sort out with. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.